All right. This is my second game from the City Championship. It was in round four, but again, I had to skip the first two games. This time, my opponent is not a kid. He's probably, I don't know, between 20 and 30 somewhere. Didn't get too much of a chance to talk to him or anything, but his name was, I don't know, Corey something. I have it on my scorecard. Uh, at any rate, I suppose both of us are on, what would that be? 2 out of 3. Me from taking 2 buys and getting a win, and I don't know how he got there. But okay. In this game, I have the black pieces, and I go for the Caro-Kann. And I don't know. I guess fortunately for me, we actually go into a line that I have a decent amount of experience in, both online and over the board with my friends. We get the Panov, and I've been playing this G6 version, which is like the 5th most popular move in the Masters database, and then in the Lichess database, it's like 7th. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting move. You get this Fianchettoed bishop, and yeah, often both your bishops are actually really good. And it was actually felt quite nice to be much more booked up than my opponent, because, you know, this is again a game 100 plus 30-second increment, and genuinely by, like, I don't know, this point, okay, actually here, let me back up slightly. By like move 5 or whatever, since I was much more booked up than my opponent, I had like a 10-12 minute advantage already, which didn't end up being very important because I later on tanked a bunch of time, but it was just kind of a fun feeling. Okay, so knight c3, knight f6. Obviously, you know, he didn't take the pawn immediately. The whole point is that if you take the pawn immediately, you actually don't take back with the queen, because that allows development of the knight with tempo. It's not my favorite. If the pawn was taken immediately, I would play knight f6 regardless. So, you know, we could transpose into like the same thing, sort of. And then here I would take. If, you know, my opponent played into that, that could totally happen. But anyways, in the game, you know, all the ideas are really the same, which is like my opponent is trying to develop his knight to be able to, you know, trade a bunch of stuff on d5, and I develop my knight also. My opponent takes, I take, and then usually knight takes knight is not played here. Bishop c4, as my opponent played, is indeed the most one of the most common moves. Queen b3 is also played, but bishop to c4 is what I've seen most often, and then knight b6 is usually played, and this is the point at which I was like up 12 minutes or whatever. And then actually here, because I was sort of more knowledgeable about this opening, my opponent ends up blundering, and yeah, just sort of played the bad move here. Should bishop f4. You probably thought, you know, it was sort of like a cute idea where I can like take his bishop, and then the reason he's not losing his bishop, he's not hanging his bishop, is because he has queen f4 check. But I actually did this in the game because this is not good. The reason being is I can develop a piece while blocking the check. So like the problem is he actually has to play queen f4 check now to win back his piece, so he's not just completely lost. But then I can develop naturally while blocking the check, so he just gives me free development. And on top of that, once takes happens, I've just won a pawn. And, you know, it's possible that in this position, my opponent saw this, bishop b5, but I actually have check. And yeah, I don't know. Then there are a lot of things that can happen here. But for example, you know, king d1, knight takes rook, bishop takes rook, and maybe like f6, I guess. And actually, both of us are getting our pieces trapped here. But, you know, even if like he plays this, maybe I can get this in. Maybe my piece actually isn't trapped and his is. So this, you know, might be just way better for me. Yeah, and, you know, otherwise I was even also trying to calculate, like, if this happens like this, and then this. But, you know, this probably isn't even necessary because then his bishop gets out. Okay, but anyway, my opponent probably, once he got here, realized that bishop b5 didn't work, so he just simply castles. And now I actually end up in this position where, like, I am up a pawn, and my position's certainly better, but it does get a bit, like, sort of tenuous to try to defend because I'm not castled and it might take me a while to castle. And one annoying thing about this sort of opening is that my e-pawn is still on the starting square, and it could also become weak if I castle, which we'll see that sort of happens. But anyway, I go ahead and defend my knight, and then my opponent's going to try to get this knight fork in, which is fine. I totally saw that. The best way for me to defend against that is to drop my knight back to e6, which again, like, this is a little bit ugly. You know, this is the price that I'm paying for being up a pawn, right? But there's really nothing I can do about it. This, you know, very easily just obviously fails to a4, and then I'm, you know, completely lost. Okay, so now I play knight back to e6, and basically now my opponent just has to try to develop and put pressure on me as fast as he can before I can consolidate. My plan is to somehow, like, maybe go like this and this, and somehow get this knight off of this square. Even if, you know, if nothing happens, I might even try to play like b6, bishop b7, and hopefully that works. I didn't actually end up having time for that though, so my opponent plays knight f3. It's a very sensible move. We're going to try to get the knight in to e5 potentially. Yeah, or actually maybe even the knight here. I don't know. Oh, sorry. We're going to try to get the knight. The knight can't go to e5. We're going to try to get maybe the knight into g5. That way, if I take, knight here. That way, if I take, I get forked, is the idea. But okay. One move that I really should have considered, but for some reason I didn't, was just to play f6 here, which prevents any ideas of the knight jumping in. But I was just, you know, sort of single-mindedly set on getting my bishop out and kicking this knight away and trying to castle. So I played bishop d7. And then, since I did play bishop d7, now the knight actually does come into e5 to try to attack this bishop, so I can't castle, obviously. And so, but here, this is actually a blunder. I'm just completely winning. And I saw the right move, and I was just too nervous to play it. And I sort of like psyched myself out and like calculated incorrectly. The whole point of playing bishop d7 was that I can actually now defend this c7 square an extra time, because I did play the correct first move, which is rook c8 check. Now, you know, king to b1. But the whole point now is that it looks like I basically should be winning a piece, right? And I saw this whole sequence, and I just sort of miscalculated. Because first of all, obviously, this just fails, so I'm winning a piece here. But what I saw that kind of stressed me out is I thought, well, what if takes here? And for some reason, I only looked as far as like, okay, well, or one of the things I saw was if, like, right here we're even on material, right? If I take here and I'm up a piece, well, then this comes with check, and I'm definitely not up a piece anymore. I'm just up a pawn. Which, honestly, I guess I totally could have gone for. I don't really see an issue with this. But the other thing was that I thought if this, then this, then this, then this can't be very good for me. Yeah. What else? Oh, the final thing was obviously knight takes on f4, knight takes on d7, but then instead of taking back, this is I had also considered I can just drop my knight right back here, and this is apparently what you're supposed to do. But what made me sort of nervous is now now I suppose f4, then king takes, then this, right? And I suppose now I have to play this position where I'm going to have two pieces for a rook, so this has to be good, and this is the whole point of what should happen in the game. Okay, but anyway, lots of variations there, and really I should have seen this. There's not really an excuse for not playing knight takes f4, but I just got sort of nervous about, again, mainly this line here, because I just figured like this rook is going to come in and have a lot of pressure going on because I can't really get rid of this knight otherwise, right? Okay, but anyway, that's why I didn't play it, but I totally should have. I just simply play bishop c6, to try to kick the knight out. And oh, this is what I thought I saw. I thought, like, well, actually, okay, if knight takes here, like this, one thing that I thought would be, like, I could play this, and then if the knight goes anywhere, then I can take the bishop. But if he takes, then he actually has to play this, rook c1, and now I can't do this because I lose my rook. But okay. I was considering also I could just take like this too and then castle or something, and I'll be fine. Somehow get this knight out and castle, and I'll be okay. But okay. My opponent does not take my bishop. My opponent drops his bishop back, so it can't ever be taken in the future. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm a pawn, and I've had enough trying to defend this position. I'm, done being all stressed out over this. So I'm just gonna take, and then here I've been sort of trying to hold on to my one pawn advantage, my opening advantage that I had for so long, and it's really like taken a lot out of me actually. And so here I blunder. I make quite an awful move, which I really shouldn't have made. Which is I play rook c5, and I actually could not see the difference between castle, like rook here, and rook c5 or whatever, because I thought I would just get this regardless. I thought my opponent would try to double up on the d file or whatever, no matter what I did. So I didn't see the difference in the move order, and I thought, well, if I play this, then I am, all ready to go to double up on the c file. And I guess I was just trying to, I was foolishly thinking, I was like, well, there's no way my opponent will take my rook immediately. My opponent will probably try to remain active and go like this, and then force me to take, right? Because if he's down a pawn, psychologically, he probably won't be wanting to exchange material so willingly. So I guess that sort of psychological weakness there inhibited me from fully calculating, because I definitely did see this, and this, and I just thought, well, okay, that's fine, I'll play this. But I did not see, at the very end of this line, how problematic b4 is, because now I'm actually losing, really, no matter where I go. Or not really losing, actually. I guess I can play here. But the whole point is that this, right? And a very similar variant of that happens in the game. So I don't know what I was thinking. But anyways, I take here, and then I just drop back to e6. I'm going to play this rook c8 check, knight d8, blocking the check, rook takes knight, king takes, and then I get forked and I lose a pawn. And, I've blown my advantage by move 23. I won my advantage on move 5. Now I've blown it, and this game is completely drawn. And so really we just make a lot of sort of meaningless moves where we're trying to get our kings into the center and keep our pawns safe and stuff. And I don't know if my opponent's trying to win, or I'm trying to win, or who's trying to win. Realistically, I don't think either of us have chances to win. The only imbalance in the position is f pawn versus e pawn, which I guess maybe feels like it should be beneficial to him, but really I don't see much of a substantial difference. This is obviously just drawn. And so I don't know, I've always thought that it's demonstrates a bit of a psychological weakness to offer a draw to your opponent, because then they might try to push on, seeing that you don't really want to keep playing anymore. So I sort of resolved to not offer a draw, but I figured if my opponent offered a draw, I would just instantly accept over any time over these next 20 moves or whatever, or next 15 moves. So that was what I was thinking. I was like, well, I'll just offer a draw no matter what. I was kind of getting tired of playing, or I'll just accept a draw no matter what if it's offered. So anyway, we just start, moving our pieces around. I don't really know, the rationale behind these moves doesn't really make a ton of sense. I guess centralize my bishop. I was eventually getting kind of worried if he was able to somehow line up the ability to go like this and eventually play f4 and do some stuff, but really there was never anything that could possibly happen. So we're just shuffling our bishops around, and eventually I played this, which I was not actually too pleased with, because it basically ended up allowing my opponent to, when I played, oh gosh, sorry. When I played a5, it ended up allowing my opponent to fix my pawn on a dark square, which means, he's always going to be able to attack it, and I won't be able to defend it. So now I just have to resign my bishop to dropping back to c7 and just staying there. And then at this point in the game, I was like, okay, no matter what my opponent does, I played this to prevent, I guess I played this to prevent f4. But anyway, I was like, okay, whatever my opponent does, I'm just going to shuffle my bishop back and forth between these two squares, or somehow maintain the defense of this pawn, and then see what happens, right? Okay, and then at this point, I don't know, my opponent's, I guess, like, trying to win still. I don't know what he's doing. But I thought that, like, it doesn't really make sense for either of us to move our kings or anything, so I thought maybe I would just shuffle my pieces around and maybe he would eventually try to go for f4, but I don't know. I guess that might have been what he was planning. But he plays here, king e3, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I may as well, move here to defend both of my pawns, right? So I can move my king, because now I want to move my king. He abandoned the opposition, so I can play this now. But if I play it now, I lose this pawn, and that definitely can't be good, because these pawns are going to come create a passer. So, when my opponent plays king e3, I played bishop c3 to defend both. And then my opponent moves his bishop there, which I don't really know what he was doing, probably just shuffling. And this actually is a losing move, which if I had been thinking straight, I might have been able to calculate more easily. Because this is actually a really nice sort of thematic endgame tactic. I can play here, bishop d4 check, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes bishop, king to d3, and then I have this awesome move, g5, and now my opponent's in zugzwang. No matter what he does, he's going to be losing. So for instance here, I guess maybe here, zugzwang again, right? Here, here, yeah, it's just zugzwang, and the whole point being that if we go back to this position, either one of these two moves will let me create a pass pawn. But okay, I didn't see that because I wasn't thinking straight. I think g4 might be just a bit hard to spot from afar. But anyway, I thought that was kind of a crazy sequence when I saw that later in my analysis. That is move 44, bishop b6. I didn't see that, but I thought I saw something else that was winning, or at least interesting, which is I played king c4, and I was spending a lot of time calculating, trying to see what would happen if I play here, 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 and then he definitely has to give up his bishop for this pawn. So here, 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 and then this is definitely a draw. So I just thought he was going to try to draw this way, which I was totally fine with. But I thought it would be interesting to go for anyway, because there's a potential that he would mess up, right? Because, if one of us counts wrong or something, or he chooses not to sack his bishop for this pawn, then maybe I'll be able to win this a4 pawn and march my pawn down to the end of the board. So I thought this would be like a fun chance to like maybe try to win, I guess, because, we're both playing, or he's playing way too strangely for such an obviously drawn position. And so then my opponent plays bishop d8, which is fine. It's not a losing move because it definitely still allows him to sack for this pawn should he need to. And then I play this because I'm just going to try to take the a4 pawn, which he can't really prevent. And then, he plays king to d3 because he wants me to have to move my bishop, which I do. I just go to a1, and then he blunders. At this point, I'm assuming the game is still drawn for the same reason as before, which is just that, he can always come this way in towards to win my pawns, and sack his bishop for this pawn. In fact, let me just enable the computer real quick and see what it thinks. Yeah, this certainly has to be a draw, no matter what happens. But okay, my opponent blunders here and plays this, which definitely is terrible, because now I can play e4 check with a discovered attack on the bishop, and now winning the game is quite simple, which is kind of a honestly shocking blunder by my opponent there. I had really no right to be winning this game. I gave up my advantage early, and then it was drawn for like a good 20-something moves. And then my opponent starts playing in a very, industrious way, very overly excitable way, I would say. Blunders his bishop, and now it's just lost. From here, it's pretty simple. I mean, I can show what happened. The only thing I have to be careful of is he got here, here, and I guess I could be in some trouble if I allow him to, go here. I mean, even then, probably not, I guess. But, there's no need to allow this, right? So I just played bishop back to e7, and my opponent resigned. So yeah, there you go. I won a game, which I had no right to win. I, in fact, gave up my entire advantage on, move 15. And the only thing I did to merit winning this game was just shuffle pieces back and forth in an endgame until my opponent blundered, and I even missed my first winning chance, but luckily my opponent blundered again. So there you have it. Sometimes you don't have to play perfectly, you just have to, wait for your opponent to make mistakes, and sometimes they'll make more than one. So that's that. Now, in this tournament, I have won 2 games in a row, which is a lot of fun, and I will see you for the next round.